Segment is Obamacare dead? The judicial story shifts from Virginia, where it got killed, to Florida, where another killing may take place. We will debate. Please stay with us. The Kudlow Report. Is Obamacare dead? Well, the Department of Justice plans to fight yesterday's federal court ruling that the individual mandate is unconstitutional. But in a Florida court on Thursday, over 20 state AGs will resume their protest of Obamacare. So is the government takeover of health care crumbling? Here now is Democratic policy analyst and radio host Mark Levine, syndicated columnist and radio talk show host Ben Ferguson. Mark Levine, your troops are kind of running out of rationalizations here as each court and judge rules against them. What are you going to do about this?
Well, Larry, let's be clear here. Some 16 courts have ruled that the thing is constitutional. 14 cases were dismissed out of hand. 2 ruled on the merits it was constitutional. This judge, their opinion is so bizarre, it's like the judge hasn't even gone to law school. It violates 75 years of precedent. It cites provisions from the Lochner era. If this judge is right, let's face it, Social Security is unconstitutional, Medicare is unconstitutional, minimum wage laws don't exist, civil rights laws don't exist. This judge is citing opinions that there's 50 or 75 Supreme Court decisions that say this judge is wrong, not to mention it violates specifically 3 provisions of the Constitution.
Before you hammer back at our great friend Mark Levine, who has this great point of view, you know, I'm not a lawyer, heaven forbid, but it kind of sounded like, despite what Mark's saying, is this judge in Virginia had a pretty good sense of our constitutional freedom, Ben. Constitutional freedom. Is that part of this? Here's Mark. Mark's looking at his constitutional notes right there. Go ahead, Ben Ferguson.
Look,
is this about constitutional freedom?
This judge said the individual mandate is unconstitutional, which is what many other scholars and lawyers have said in the past. We all know, look, some of the lawsuits that went ahead right away afterwards were for political reasons. I'm not going to disagree with that. There were some lawsuits that were done that didn't make sense, and of course they should have been struck down, and I'm glad they were. This was an actual good lawsuit that made sense, saying, look, you cannot mandate that people purchase something. People said, and the argument was, well, look, we mandate people to have car insurance when they drive. Driving's a right. Having health insurance is now they're mandating it, saying you have no option to opt out of it. That's the difference now. Is the government's mandating that you do something that has nothing to do with you choosing to be able to do it. They're saying no matter what, you are mandated, and that's where they're wrong on this and why the Constitution's right.
Go ahead, Mark.
The government mandates you do things all the time. Article 1, Section 8, Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, to provide for the general welfare of the United States, to regulate commerce among the several states.
But these are exactly what's been overturned by the Virginia court judge. And in fact,
16 courts agree with me, and one whacked-out political judge is citing opinions from the 1920s that have been declared wrong for 75 years.
The 1920s were a great decade, Mark, but I want to ask you about this. The power to tax. Now, I remember when President Obama says this was not a tax. You are now saying it is clearly a tax. And is that why Obamacare's polls continue to decline? Because people know it is, in fact, a tax.
The Supreme Court has declared that there's no difference between a tax and a penalty. This judge doesn't seem to want to follow Supreme Court precedent. All right, he'll be overturned. The point is that all the time Congress says that you are taxed if you don't do things. For example, if you don't have a child, you're taxed. Your taxes are higher if you don't have a child. Now, why are Republicans challenging that one?
They also know that your living expenses are not as high if you don't have a child, so they take that in consideration. That is the most ridiculous argument I've heard for socialized medicine.
How is that different from health care? There are $43 billion of uninsured people.
One at a time.
Mark, even Robert Gibbs said he was not a lawyer. And even, you know what Robert Gibbs' defense was for the administration yesterday? He said, look, this is the most popular thing, the mandate, in this law. So basically, we're not worried about the Constitution because we think people liked it. They're saying,
ridiculous.
we're not looking at the Constitution.
I'm not talking about popular at all. I'm talking about the law of the United States. This is a judge that's citing provisions from the Lochner era. Anyone who's taken, law school, constitutional law 101 knows that this was the ruling that was so bad that FDR decided to pack the courts until the United States Supreme Court switched on it. They haven't ruled this way since the 1930s, and if this judge is right, as I said, Medicare goes out the window, Social Security goes out the window, civil rights laws go out the window. We might as well refight the Civil War.
I'm seeing say this on national TV. Nobody else, including people that are on the left that are lawyers, are saying what you're saying. I don't know how you're getting that far off base.
Read the opinion. He's citing the child tax labor cases. He's citing Linder v. United States. He's citing laws that Robert Bork called an abomination. They're so. I mean, why does he cite Dred Scott?
But he basically says, look, that this is a constitutional breach of power. That's all he's saying. But I do want to ask you, Mark, what about the upcoming suit? Let's go from Virginia down to Florida. You got over 20 state attorneys general. Now, they are going to raise another issue, not only the Commerce Clause and the Taxing Clause and the mandate, but they're going to raise a state sovereignty issue regarding Medicaid mandates. Many scholars think this may be even more significant as an obstacle in the court system. What's your quick take? And then I want Ben to weigh in.
They should raise the South Carolina nullification controversy of 1830 and try to refight the Civil War. Look, the Constitution says the federal government trumps the state government. The Constitution says that if you grow marijuana in your backyard, that's commerce, but $43 billion in health care isn't commerce.
Real quick, Ben,
Larry,
I'm going to give Ben the last word real quick, Ben, because I got to get out.
Here's the overall. This is good for those that think that Obamacare is bad for this country. This president does not like states' rights. This is good for state rights. And this is going to continue to let the American people realize how overreaching this law was in the first place. This is bad for Obama.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much, Mark Levine and Ben Ferguson. Up next inside the Kudlow Inbox, look inside.